Is a subsurface drip irrigation research site, and so you notice I said subsurface. So most of the micro irrigation, most of the drip irrigation in the world is above ground, and there's some reasons for that, and some of the reasons actually deal with the ability to see what's going on. And so if you're growing something that's really high value crop, oftentimes, the difference between whether it's irrigated or not may mean, thousands of dollars. Because, maybe a crop of strawberries maybe takes you spend $30,000 a year on that crop of strawberries. But maybe you're getting $50,000 as a profit, so it's going to vary from year to year. But we're not dealing with crops such as strawberries in Kansas to any extent. We're not going to grow 3 million acres of strawberries in Kansas for sure. And so we're growing crops such as corn. And for corn, maybe a good yield would be 250 bushels an acre, somewhere between 200 and 250 bushels per acre. And with corn, I think it's what, $4 or $5. You can see that we're not dealing with $20,000 worth of profit every year, and we're not putting $30,000 into each crop. And so, if you're putting that large amount of money in, and you have that large potential for profit, the cost of your irrigation system is insignificant. Maybe this takes maybe $1,400 an acre to put this in, $1,200 to $1,400 an acre to put this in. Whereas with a center pivot, maybe that cost is more like $500 an acre. And so that's the sprinkler system, and which we know predominate in Kansas. Actually, about 80% of our ground, 80 to 90% of our irrigated ground now in Kansas is with center pivot sprinkler system. However, when I first got here 30 years ago, probably only about 40% of the ground was sprinkler irrigated at that time. The rest of it is furrow irrigated. So we do know that we see a migration from the furrow irrigation or the surface gravity system to the pressurized systems. So the next pressurized system up the line would be sprinkler. And then if you said from beyond that, maybe it's micro irrigation or drip irrigation. So why are we looking at it in Kansas if it costs that much and we're not growing these high value crops? Well, our water is declining, so we have less water than we had 30, 50 years ago when we first started pumping large amounts from Ogallala. It continues to decline. We also see that there is places where drip irrigation can be cost competitive. And in some cases, that's in the central part of Kansas, where they're still in the areas where they're still doing some irrigation. The farm sizes are smaller sometimes in those areas. They're sometimes more irregular shaped fields. I mean, we're out here in the flat land of Kansas, western Kansas, so most of the fields are 160 acres. But as we move back into areas where they get rainfall, those areas may be cut up by streams, and so the field sizes are smaller. And when they have the ability to do irrigation there, maybe a center pivot is no longer $500 an acre because it has to be smaller. And when center pivots get contracted, you still have all that cost for the controls and the center pivot point. And so maybe instead of $500 an acre, now it's $1,000 an acre, or maybe it's $1,200 an acre. And then drip irrigation is the same price. The other reason we see some interest in the central part of Kansas in drip irrigation is they've been typically using, as I said, small irregular shaped fields for furrow irrigation, and they know they're very inefficient. And sometimes these farmers they have a job in town, and then they come home and they farm before they go to work and farm after they go to work. And that's not well suited for irrigation when you have small fields for surface irrigation, because the water is going to be running off for long periods of time before they get back to change it to a different area. Well, with drip irrigation, you can easily automate it, and it's also putting on smaller amounts of water when it does. And so you can, that is one benefit we've seen in the smaller areas in central Kansas where they've started to adopt it. In western Kansas, the fields are still fairly large. The farmers that are adopting it here, some of them are because they think they've been traditional fur irrigators, and they say, you know, I really hate to put that circle out there, that circular center pivot, inside this square and lose those corners. And so by putting drip irrigation, they can capture the rest of the water. You have different types of drip line in your hands.